exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I'll show you how to work on radios and other things that run on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1930s through about the 1960s, and today we have this RCA Victor radio with no tags, no markings except for some markings on the back, so I'm not sure what the model number is, and I've never worked on this particular model. I'd say it's definitely got the whole machine age deco styling going on. It's got this very tiny slit of a dial. So I'm wondering if there's some light source behind that that does some magic trick. No clue. I'm not sure of the era, but the fact that we've got an older style Coke bottle tube in there makes me think that maybe could be from the late 30s maybe. And that tube looks like it could possibly be a ballast tube. I don't know. RCA came out with these metal tubes and they were very proud of it. So when they did, these radios would come just nothing but those metal tubes. So maybe that's a replacement. 25Z6, that's the rectifier. Okay, so that makes me think that is probably definitely a ballast tube due to its height and the fact that it's rusty because they did get hot. That's probably the output tube. And then we've got 1, 2, 3 IF tubes, and maybe there's another one up here somewhere. Let's take this back off and see what else is going on. Well, that is most certainly a ballast tube. Makes me wonder, why did they bother? I can see why. This is a 6SQ7. j7. So I'd see what they've done here. They've used 6-volt tubes. Maybe because they were cheaper for some reason, but they've decided to compensate by that lack of additional, what would that be? 6, 12, 18. Need to compensate for 18 volts worth of filament. So that probably is making up for that. It's just a 5-tube set, but it has a ballast tube in it. It's kind of jerry-rigged. It also looks like the speaker has a lot of holes in it, so I'm kind of not so thrilled about this radio so far. The only reason I'm restoring it is because it is unusual, and it would probably do nicely in our auction because the styling is definitely pretty desirable. So let's take the knobs off and take the chassis out and take a looky-loo around. Oh, there's already some things I don't like about this. I had my sneaking suspicions when I saw this warning on the back of this. It says, important, disconnect cord from power supply before removing this cover. Replace cover before operating. That made me think, is this a hot chassis set? As in everything is going to chassis ground, and indeed it is. The electrolytic, all the paper caps, they're all going to chassis ground. And before I get too carried away, I want to make sure that it actually will do anything at all because it's got that ballast tube. It's very difficult to find ballast tubes that are the right kind, and if not, you have to make your own set of resistors. And as many sets as I have to restore these days, I'm not sure if I want to get into that. So I'm going to plug it up and bring it up and see if it makes noise. If it makes noise, then we can resume restoration. If not, I don't know, I'll think about it. All right, we're going to do a quick check here to see if this has any life. Okay, so we got pilot, that's good. There's only one tube here that has filaments that I can see, and it looks like they are coming up. That probably means the ballast tube's okay. And we got bad filter caps, so that's good. The audio section works. That means probably all of our tube filaments lit. They obviously lit because it's a series string. I've repaired worse speakers than that, so I'm not concerned about that. What we're going to do with this is we have some GFCI plugs, and we're going to put a GFCI plug on this guy. That way, if someone does somehow get through the back and touch this in any way, it's going to like immediately shut itself off. Otherwise, everything that is ground in this radio, which is ground, would have to be lifted, and that may or may not work. So this will, again, I think it's a collector's radio. They'll probably put it on a shelf and never turn it on again, but we do want to get it working. Before I do that, I'm going to take it out and get all this dust and stuff off of it. Ew. Alright, that cleaned up a lot better than I thought. It's just loose dust. So now, I'm going to do the bare minimum to get this to work. That's kind of an awkward thing to work on. Looks like we have two electrolytics here. 12 microfarads and 20 microfarads. Oh, by the way, I did see a manufacturing date. This is from 1939. And then we have another one here. So we have 3 electrolytics in here. That's 30 microfarads. I think I've got a few 10 microfarad caps, but the rest are going to be replaced with 47 microfarad caps. Be fine. Alright, we've got the new capacitors in there. The 3 capacitors anyway. Bare minimum. Those paper caps are probably leaky as hell. Put a polarized plug on it, even though I'm going to put a GFCI plug on it. That means when it's live, the chassis is neutralized. You just shouldn't trust that, because what if someone has the wiring in their house not done correctly? So far I don't hear any humming. Of course, there's not much of an antenna on here. I'll hook one up. Maybe it's on a different page. Okay, it works. Now, before I continue, I'm going to repair that speaker because that looks gnarly. And now that the radio works, and I know it's going to work, I'm going to spend some time on that. Okay, so I repaired the speaker. I just got a piece of paper towel and I soaked it in glue, and then I formed it into shape. And you don't want to get it on the edges here. Luckily the surround was okay. You want that speaker to be able to move. So let's go ahead and try it out. The other thing I did was... Oh, come on, plug in. Ugh. I had a hell of a time with this tuning mechanism working right. This was all completely gummed up and it wouldn't turn. That must be the tuning indicator to show you what station you're on. Like this weird basic barber pole shape. That was all gummed up. So let's fire it up. I wonder what that looks like through the slit. Obviously we need to clean it up, but I get it. Kind of wonder if the ballast tube makes it longer to warm up, because it doesn't seem like it's very quick. Then again, we've got mostly old capacitors in there, so that's probably not helping things at all.
Or log on to Astro Vastu. I would pray for me.
It's very sensitive radio. And that's amazing because like 90% of the caps are still in it. So we're off to a good start here. Now that we need to replace more of those paper capacitors underneath. Alright, so now that we know that the radio is going to work, it's time to replace the rest of the paper capacitors. This era of RCA's used, I believe they're making their own capacitors, but anyway, they would mark them this way. That reads 1/10 of a microfarad, 300 volts. This says 0.01. I don't know what 1M means. Doesn't really matter to me. I use 630 volts for everything. This says 0.01. This says 0.0047. So you just look at the values and replace like with like. Alright, the rest of the capacitors are replaced. And I'm glad that a lot of the wiring in this is cloth covered, so I don't need to worry about it. The rubber coated stuff, I just kind of leave it alone. It's like unless I shatter the insulation, I'm not too concerned about it, so I'm just real careful about when I replace parts around it.
History away. The NBA playoffs on ESPN. ESPN. It's fascinating today. Well,
The safety of the drug. The needed.
the contract is 21-year-old Corey Nelson with.
Still impressed with how sensitive this thing really is. There's not like a whole lot of radio here. It's pretty basic underneath, but it works fine. So I'm not going to add audio input to this thing because it is a collector's radio and also hot chassis. Even though I'm going to put a GFCI plug on the end of it. All right, welcome to day number 2 of working on the weird RCA. And looks like our glue is dried on our speaker. That's good. Our little rolly thing is rolling like it should. And the radio works great.
Free medical consultation to
Visit Insights.
better money habits in their local communities.
And the repair job I did, there was a crack on this. Still definitely a crack there, but it's not that noticeable. I super glued it and put a little reinforcement in here. Now what I need to do also is reinforce the back. It's like someone put tape on this years ago. I'm not real thrilled about that. See if I can get that off. And I'm going to find something to reinforce it with. Here's what I did for the back, which by the way was broken into 2 pieces. I put these little wood strips on the back, or in the inside. That just makes it a lot more sturdy, which is important because this is preventing people from touching the chassis. Let's see. Might have to get slightly longer screws because those wood strips are going down that thing. I'm trying to remember, how's this held in there? Yep, it's held in that way. Interesting. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is polish the case. It's an interesting case too. We've got bits and pieces that are attached here. Like it's not all in one piece, I guess, because this would have been too difficult to do in Bakelite. Well, all in one piece of Bakelite. But I'm going to use this wax, Carne Bacar wax. What is that? You use this Carne Bacar wax, and that's what you should use on Bakelite. Bakelite's pretty sensitive. Do not use any harsh chemicals or cleaners. Alright, well I spent probably about an hour going over this with Carne wax, and you can see it's a lot shinier than it was. It's not perfect, but I'll take it. I put it back together again, it's working fine.
But there's also an absolute stunt out of LSU. They out that. God's voice. Your heart to his voice. You'll find the peace you're seeking and find the only love that fulfills the human heart. Jesus. You responding like they respond. You have reason to be concerned about the state of your soul. That he is really well put together in his lower body.
Anyway, this will probably be someone's shelf queen. It's definitely a love or hate it design. Got the back secured on there. I'm going to let it run here for a few hours because those tubes, and especially that ballast tube, probably generates a lot of heat. And if there's anything that's going to break down thermally, and this thing's probably been out of service for many decades, you'll want to find out before you send it out to the wild. But other than that, that concludes this episode of Radiorama. So until the next time a radio comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.